Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show where we think, act, and prosper. Today, we're going to dive into who caused inflation. This is a constant thing that is brought up in today's political climate. Which presidency caused inflation? And so we're actually going to do some kind of a deep dive into what causes inflation. We're going to listen to some great economists such as Milton Friedman. We're also going to watch another video just to see what sentiment is about inflation and just really just get to the bottom of this question or this myth that which I believe is a myth that Biden caused inflation. And I'm not a Biden apologist, but I'm just a person that thinks objectively about these things. And so we're going to jump into the intro and then we're going to go ahead and get into who caused inflation. All right.
Think. Act. And prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
All right. As you may have noticed, I had this conversation with Rick Rule on my show about who caused inflation, and we both came to the conclusion, or we both believe that government causes inflation. And so, obviously, we've been through multiple different parties in the last 20 years. I mean, we went from Reagan, who was a Republican, Bill Clinton, Democrat. We had George Bush, Republican. Barack Obama, Democrat, Donald Trump, Republican, Joe Biden, Democrat. And so, this kind of thing has been just bounced back and forth between the different political parties. And so we're going to go ahead and dive into a couple of videos and articles today just to really dispel the myth and figure out who really caused inflation. And so I'm going to go ahead and share screen. This was a cool video I found on YouTube, and this was CNBC who did a study, and they interviewed some people, and they came up with some statistics about how people felt about the economy. So this is what we're going to jump into first. So let's go ahead and get to it. Please let me know if you're able to hear the audio here. I think it should be good, but let me know if you are unable to hear it.
Confidence in the economy during the Biden.
All right.
This chart shows consumers' confidence in the economy during the Biden and Trump administrations. As of June 2024, confidence in the economy under President Biden averaged nearly 28 points lower compared to during former President Trump's term. It hit an all-time low back in June of 2022. According to the latest survey from Gallup, 53% of Americans believe the Republican Party will do a better job with the economy, compared to just 39% who favor the Democrats.
At this point, every survey that I know of tells me that Republicans are seen as having the advantage for the management of the economy.
Voters seem to think that President Trump was a better steward of the economy than President Biden. And I think that's going to be an important advantage for Republicans.
While the U.S. technically isn't in a recession, roughly 3 out of 5 Americans believe it is. In 2024, nearly 3/4 of Americans.
All right, who here believes we're in a recession? Please drop it in the comments if you think that we are in a recession. Obviously, other people are feeling the impacts of the economy and such. So drop in the comments if you believe that we are in recession or not, regardless of what the data says.
Americans said strengthening the economy should be a top policy priority, while a third mentioned economic issues as the nation's most important problem.
I think that the economy is really top of mind for people. They are really concerned with how their families are doing financially and economically. We are in a very strange situation where people don't feel like they're thriving in spite of many strong indicators in the economy.
So did Americans enjoy a better economy under President Trump or Biden? And which candidate will be able to fix the economy?
I think a lot of economists and commentators.
All right, so Nemesis says, yes, we are in a recession. Why do you think that? What makes you come up with that conclusion? I'm curious.
and certainly a lot of politicians believe that there is a disparity between how consumers are feeling about the economy and what the high-level economic statistics about economic growth, about the level of employment, about the rate of unemployment are telling you.
Statistics of that sort cut very little ice with average households and with voters. They judge principally on the basis of their own experience. From the standpoint of consumers and average households, the issue is, how am I living? Is my ability to afford the basics of daily life improving or not?
President Biden's term has seen the highest inflation in 40 years, reaching a 4-decade peak of 9.1% in June 2022. As of June 2024, prices rose by 19.3% during his term, compared to just 5% for former President Trump during the same time frame in office.
All right, so this is where I have an issue with these statistics. Okay, so yeah, it looks bad on surface, which we're gonna get into some videos that's gonna explain how inflation comes with a lag. So regardless if Biden was in office from January 21 and it went up to May 24, it went up 19% versus 5% during Trump's term. Inflation comes with a lag based on monetary policy, and so fiscal and monetary policy. So this is kind of like where I think the data kind of gets skewed and it doesn't really extract, okay, what's the why behind this or the other factors that contributes to this. And so, but we're going to get into this. We're not going to watch this whole video. It's about 14 minutes, but because we got some other videos to get to. But as we can see, under President Biden's term, technically inflation prices went up about 19%.
Consumer sentiment during President Biden's time in office has been quite weak. And I think the explanation for that is pretty straightforward. People really don't like inflation.
High inflation also ate into Americans' purchasing power. According to estimates, the average inflation-adjusted weekly paycheck shrunk by about 4.4%, or $50 during Biden's term. That's despite the fact that wages have risen faster under Biden than under Trump.
Average households have judged that their wages, salaries, and annual incomes have not been rising robustly during this period, even as there's been an extended period of what economists regard as full employment.
Price inflation has been growing faster than wage inflation. So the purchasing power of wages has actually gone down. You're able to buy less with every dollar you earn.
When you have buying power that's been eroded.
Okay, so as we can see, I mean, people are feeling it. They're feeling it in their pockets. We had Nemesis here say that because I know a lot of people who lost their jobs already, that is why Nemesis believes that we are in a recession already. And one key quote that Reagan said during his presidency: when your neighbor loses his job, it's a recession. But when you lose your job, it's a depression. So So definitely I can see the case for that. So as we can see, multiple people, we see the numbers. Inflation went up 19% under Biden's term. Okay, so but we have a few things we need to look at before we even get to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start here. So what causes inflation? This is through Investopedia. They have multiple different, layers to this. I mean, they have, the goods and production and stuff like that, which we're not going to get into that. We're going to kind of just focus here on monetary policy as well as monetary devaluation. So expansionary fiscal policy by governments can increase the amount of discretionary income for both businesses and consumers. If government cuts taxes, businesses may spend it on capital improvements, employee compensation, or new hiring. Consumers may purchase more goods as well. The government could also stimulate the economy by increasing spending on infrastructure projects. The result could be an increase in demand for goods and services, leading to price increases. Just as expansionary fiscal policy can spur inflation, so too can loose monetary policy. Okay, so when we went into the pandemic, monetary policy was very, very, very loose, very loose. The Fed was buying bonds and everything. We got to look at the Fed's balance sheet during the pandemic, right? So, monetary policy was very loose. Expansionary monetary policy by central banks can lower interest rates. Central banks like the Federal Reserve can lower the cost for banks to lend, which allows banks to lend more money to businesses and consumers. The increase in money available throughout the economy leads to more spending and demand for goods and services. So the increase in money available throughout the economy leads to more spending and demand for goods and services. So just think about it. I mean, when we were hopefully my stuff is still going. I got a message saying my audio was disconnected. But when we were locked down in our homes and receiving checks, many people were receiving a lot of unemployment and such. This was money that was going into people's bank accounts, and it was pent up. They couldn't spend it. They couldn't spend it on vacations, or they couldn't really travel as much without very many restrictions, things of that nature, right? And so, as you can see here clearly in the definition, where it says that the increase in money available throughout the economy leads to more spending and demand for goods and services. And we see that the travel sector in the last few years has bounced back drastically. Okay, so then you have the aspect of monetary devaluation. So monetarists understand inflation to be caused by too many dollars chasing too few goods. In other words, the supply of money has grown too large. According to this theory, money's value is subject to the law of supply and demand, just like any other good in the market. As the supply grows, the value goes down. If the value of the money goes down, the purchasing power drops and things become relatively more expensive. So this is how it has always been defined, especially by economist Milton Friedman, which we're going to jump into a couple of videos by Milton Friedman, and we're going to start with this one here. So let's go ahead and watch this first, and let's see what Milton Friedman has to say about it. All right, no sound. Hold up. Let me see what's going on real quick. Let me make sure I get this back going. All right, let me know if you can hear this now. Let's see. Let me stop sharing, and then let me reshare it just in case, because I want to make sure you all can hear the sound. All right, here we go. All right, let me know if you can hear this now.
Japanese housewives going to market were faced with an unpleasant fact. The cash in their purses seemed to be losing its value. Prices were starting to soar as the awful story of inflation began to unfold once again. The Japanese government knew what to do. What's more, they were prepared to do it. When it was all over, economists were able to record precisely what had happened. In 1971, the quantity of money started to grow more rapidly. As always happens, inflation wasn't affected for a time. But by late 1972, it started to respond. In early 73, the government reacted. It started to cut monetary growth, but inflation continued to soar for a time. The delayed reaction made 1973 a very tough year of recession. Inflation tumbled only when the government demonstrated its determination to keep monetary growth in check.
All right, so here we can clearly see that inflation, it came with a lag. So first, the monetary policy, the government fiscal and monetary policy was too loose, and then inflation responded later, right? And so hence We're gonna get into it. We're gonna look at Biden, the national debt under Biden, as well as Trump, and we're gonna also look at when Biden got into office and when inflation started to tick up. So, as you can see, it comes with a lag, right? So this is the first point I wanted to point out.
It took 5 years to squeeze inflation out of the system. Japan had attained relative stability. Unfortunately, there's no way to avoid the difficult road the Japanese had to follow before they could have both low inflation and a healthy economy. First, they had to live through a recession until slow monetary growth had its delayed effect on inflation. Inflation is just like alcoholism. In both cases, when you start drinking or when you start printing too much money, the good effects come first. The bad effects only come later. That's why, in both cases, there's a strong temptation to overdo it, to drink too much and to print too much money. When it comes to the cure, it's the other way around. When you stop drinking or when you stop printing money, the bad effects come first and the good effects only come later. That's why it's so hard to persist with the cure.
The NFL.
All right. So as we can see, Milton Friedman said, inflation is like alcoholism. You got the punch bowl and you're just killing it, shot after shot after shot. It feels good at first, and then it comes with a lag. The bad effects come with a lag. And so the same thing is when you quit, you have your withdrawals, the bad effects come first. And as we can see, let's go ahead and share this here. Because we got to look at the facts, y'all. We got to look at the facts. Forget the emotion and whoever's in what whoever's favorite candidate is who. We got to look at the facts, right? So as you can see here on this chart, I do have the gold prices on this chart. I love looking at this chart, by the way. But as you can see, when Trump got in office in 2016, this is the Fed's balance sheet. It just stayed flat. It went down. They started quantitative tightening back in 2018. Jerome Powell announced that they were going to higher interest rates. They were going to raise interest rates and they were going to reduce the balance sheet. So they reduced it a little bit. Obviously, we ran into the pandemic, right? And the Fed cut all the way to zero. And the balance sheet of the Fed ballooned. It ballooned from 4.1 trillion to about within the first 3 months to 7.1 trillion. So the monetary base just started to increase significantly, and it just kept rising into June 2022. So now we know that Biden got into office around January of 2021. But the Fed's balance sheet ballooned right before Biden got in office. It did go up some while he was in office, but it started ballooning before then. And the Fed actually cut, monetary policy was still too loose. It was still too loose. And as we can see, the lag for inflation was there. And so we're going to look at the inflation numbers here in a second. But, the monetary policy was loose. The balance sheet was growing of the Fed. And then they began to hike interest rates and as well as reduce their balance sheet, which caused a lot of pain in the market, as well as inflation that was roaring for a lot of people as well. So, and just like Milton Friedman said, the bad effects come first, the tighter monetary policy, getting a car at 29% interest rate, getting a mortgage at 7% interest rates, whatever the case may be, people don't have a lot more money to spend. Right. And so, so when you look at this, the bad effects come first, and then the good effects come later. So that's one point I would like to drill in on. So here's another point we're going to look at. This is the M2 money supply. The government creates more money. They create money out of thin air, right? And whenever you create more money, you devalue the currency. You devalue the currency because the fiscal and monetary policy is too loose. So as you can see, 2020, who was in office, right? And granted, we're going through a pandemic during this time. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't have gotten help during the pandemic, but we need to look at the facts. It still happened under Donald Trump's watch, right? So February 2020, all the way till let's see, Biden got office January 2020. the monetary base, the M2 money supply grew significantly by the trillions. So, this isn't all. You can't just blame it all on Biden because it happened under Trump too, and it came with the lag. All right. So now we're going to look at another fact. Let's look at another fact here. Okay. Change in total U.S. debt by president. Okay. So obviously Frank FDR, he pretty much printed 178 billion there. And we can see that, right? That was a lot of money. And this was the percentage increase, like 791%. That's just crazy. Woodrow Wilson as well. FDR was obviously dealing with the Great Depression and World War II, and he was also in office for I think 3 terms or something like that. So multiple terms. I mean, Ronald Reagan increased it significantly. So as you can see, now you get into the trillions here. I mean, Obama did the same thing. 7.6 trillion. This was 64% increase, and obviously he inherited the global financial crisis, right? That happened in 2008 as Bush was coming out of office. Obama and Biden came in 2009, I believe. So yeah, we know that's the case too. Then obviously you got George H.W. Bush as well. And then you got Trump. Trump here is at 6.7 trillion. And then you have Biden here at 4.7 trillion. I don't know when this snapshot was taken. Biden's may have increased by then. But as you can see, Trump and Biden both printed trillions of dollars, helped print trillions of dollars to pretty much pump into the system. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now we're going to look at, we just got to look at the facts, y'all. This is what it is. This is the federal debt. This is the balance sheet of the Fed. So as you can see, no, this isn't the balance sheet. This is the total public debt. So as you can see, we're at 36 trillion, going on $36 trillion. In 2020, Trump was president. I mean, he was president back to 2017 when he started. It was at 19 trillion. By the end of his presidency, it was at 27 trillion. So, I mean, he added seven plus trillion there. Then Biden got in and he added multiple trillions as well. So both of them added hella trillions of dollars, right? And now we're going to look at the actual inflation chart. Okay. Who controlled Congress in 2020? Yeah, so I mean, I think Democrats probably had majority, but many Republicans obviously voted for a lot of these stimulus bills. Trump was happy to sign his name on the checks as well, and many of the bills came to his desk during that time. So yeah. So now here we look at. And then you can also put the same argument for Obama as well, when he was the president. So here we go with the inflation. So now you get the inflation data, and you can see as in 2021, right? So 2020, it goes from 2.5, it goes down to 0, the zeros, the 1 points. And during this time, many monetary expansion was happening. Loose fiscal and monetary policy, trillions of dollars were being printed during this whole year. People getting stimulus checks, PPP loans, corporations getting bailed out, everything, right? So then Biden gets into office in January of 2021. Inflation starts ticking up February, March, April, May, June, right? So this is like, okay, Biden's hop on the train. The train is picking up maximum speed, and now he has to slow the train down. Okay. So as we saw earlier, inflation comes with a lag. Many trillions were printed during this time by all parties. I'm not just blaming Trump. I mean, all parties contributed to it. The Fed, bought the government debt as well. And as you can see, Biden was in office for like 3 months when inflation started ticking up. So it's like, okay, did Biden cause inflation in 3 months that he was in office? I don't buy that at all. Like, because that's just this was an impact of all of the presidents. I mean, even prior to Trump too, like that contributed to continuous loose monetary and fiscal policy where they continued to devalue the currency, increasing the M2 money supply and such. And then, Biden was the one when the hot potato started to got passed to him, right? It got passed to him and he had the hot potato, right? And he contributed to it too. I'm not going to say that he didn't. Like, obviously, he signed some stimulus bills and, they did some funding to Ukraine and everything, in which Republicans and Democrats both supported that, right? So I'm just, the point that I'm making, Nemesis says Dems control spending. Trump was stupid enough to sign them because he wanted to get reelected. Yeah, and it's just like, I think that, in my perspective, I think that it's unfair for people to put inflation to blame only on Biden. When Biden got in, it's inflation. It's like, no, that's not true, because we just looked at a lot of facts of what contributed to the inflation that we experience today. At the same time, people's perception is their reality, right? So if Biden's in office and you're experiencing higher costs, your dollar isn't going as far, you aren't getting enough, your wages aren't growing as fast as the prices of homes and other things are growing, right? Then you're going to look at the person the leader that's in the seat at that time and be like, oh yeah, my pockets felt better under Trump, and inflation is your fault, right? So I can understand that, because people are currently living in this that's their reality, that's their perception, and that's their reality. And yeah, so Nemesis said, I think we can all agree that government spending is the problem. Yes, exactly. And so both Biden and Trump caused inflation, right? Obama too, George Bush, all of them caused inflation, right? And so that's the problem with big government. That's the problem with big government. And as government continues to get bigger, inflation is going to continue to be an issue. So now we're just going to look at the U.S. debt clock. I just got to look at this again. This scares me every time I look at it, but if I don't look at it, then I'm not going to be aware of what's happening around me. So as you can see, 35 trillion in debt. The spending currently is 6.9 trillion. We're about 1.8 trillion over the budget. This is the deficit. I think the budget is 6.2 trillion. And then obviously, the net interest on the debt currently is about 1 trillion. We got about 1 trillion on defense spending, as well as 1.5 trillion on Social Security. By the way, I started doing a little bit of research on defense stocks and ETFs, and I think I'm going to start investing in this. I mean, look, we're spending $1 trillion on it. I mean, countries all across the world are spending trillions of dollars on defense and spending. That's something that I'm going to invest in. It may not suit you or whatnot, but that's something that I think that I could profit off of. So then you got Medicare, 1.8 trillion. Then you got the unfunded liabilities, right? We got 27 trillion unfunded liabilities. I don't think Social Security, is going to be here when I get the age of 65 or 60. They may change the age to like 68, 70. I'm 36 right now. So the age may be 85 by the time I get to the age of where they say, oh, you can start collecting Social Security now. Like, they're probably gonna push the age up. They're spending us into poverty, making the dollar worthless. Exactly. So, for me, obviously you vote for who you want to vote for. I don't really care who you vote for, but just know that this is a consistent problem, and neither candidate is really addressing this issue or talking about this issue. I don't think neither candidate would get elected if they start talking about this issue. If they start talking about cutting entitlements, cutting military pensions and such, you're not getting in office for that, if you say that. So, it's really, we're just in a situation where we're damned. We're doomed. Like that's what I think about it. And Luke Grumman, I watched an interview of him, and he said he would be bearish on gold if the government cuts spending, balances the budget, stops, spending excessively, cuts Social Security, Medicare, military pensions and such. Then he would be bearish on gold, and which I don't think that's going to happen. And so, as we can see, the unfunded liabilities are $218 trillion, going on $219 trillion. So I encourage everyone to do what they can to prepare yourself. I don't know when this house of cards is going to come crashing down or whatnot, but you should be doing what you can do to prepare yourself and your families, or if you got a family, to prepare for the worst. Because I just don't think that the good times are just going to last forever. And at some point, these bills are going to come due. And I think we should actually look at this. Let's go ahead and look at this. Let's go ahead and look at this. This is something that let me find it. Find the chart. Chart. Okay, we're gonna look at the historical tax rates because this is something we need to look at. Okay. All right. Hang on. Let me find the dang chart real quick. Hold on real quick, y'all. Okay. I had this graph. I've had it before. I should have bookmarked it. Okay, so let's see. It's a bunch of articles coming. Okay, this is, we can find something here. Okay, here we go. We'll just look at this. All right. So top income tax rates by type of income. Taxes are very, very, very low compared to where they have been historically. So let's see. So here we are. You got individual tax rates. Back in the 40s, the tax rate went up from 20, what I don't know if that's 25%, up to 60% during the Great Depression, up to like almost 100%, 90 something percent during the 40s to the 60s. So when you look at historical tax rates, even it was close to 80% back in World War I area, that time period. So when you look at the individual tax rates, right? And then, as you can see, taxes are like the lowest they've been, the lowest was like in the 1920s, the roaring 20s. But as you can see, they're pretty low. So to afford the national debt, to afford pensions and Social Security and stuff, I think that tax rates are going to go significantly higher. So you may want to consider some tax advantage, some type of tax advantage investment accounts and such. I mean, I personally do a Roth, and I do an index, not index universal life, but a variable universal life and such, because your capital gains was at 40% back in the 70s, right? So so you might want to consider some things like that as well. Grim picture, but we got to do what we can do to protect ourselves, protect our wealth and everything, because at the end of the day, the politicians aren't going to save us. So do not put your faith there, because they're going to do what they've always done. And at this point, I don't think the train is stopping. So you all, thank you for joining me today. Appreciate you for engaging in the comments, Nemesis, and you all take care. All right. Talk soon. Peace.